Good morning and welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. Earth deserves more than a day. It's me, Tony P, and joining me.
Early door now. Happy to be here. Excited to get going. Day 3.
Day 3 of day 5. Charlie, it has just been amazing conversation.
It has.
And having these folks share their expertise, share their experience, has just been illuminating for me. I know that much.
Yeah. Me as well. We've covered, it feels like a variety of different topics already, and we're already on the 3rd day. Yeah. I feel like we're widening the scope for sure.
Charlie, why don't you do this? Why don't you go back and kind of recap day 1?
Yeah.
For those who are joining us for the first time, we are doing 5 days of environmental justice. Monday was Earth Day, April 22nd. And we were like, you know what? Earth deserves more than a day.
Yeah.
And so we've been working to gather a number of different professionals, academics, advocates, just regular people to come on and share information with us about environmental justice. And take it from there, Charlie. Day 1.
First day, first panel was what is environmental justice?
Yeah, it was.
And that went on for a little bit longer than we expected, but I think it was more than justified. We had some questions from the audience on that. We had a lot of different perspectives on what environmental justice is. We had Kim Kamara, who is an activist and advocate. We had Andrea Goodness, who is a part of the King County Parks. So 2 different perspectives there. One person working in more of a government capacity and one person working very much outside of it, along with Nancy Huizer, who is running NH Consulting, and Ashley Shoecraft, who is the executive director of Braided Seeds. I thought that was a really important conversation to start off the week with, kind of giving people an idea of what different types of roles, how different types of roles in environmentalism can shape your view of environmental justice. I thought it also got very personal, a lot of like personal analogies from our panelists kind of describing how they came to think about environmental justice. After that, from 1 to 2, we had the Black Farmers Collective. They were talking about creating a local food system, which I thought was a great panel to follow the first one because it kind of materialized what those panelists were talking about of how do we create community, how do we sustain ourselves in a more localized space. And after that was, I think, so far my favorite panel. I think I'm a little bit biased just because that's one of my good friends. Kyle Yasui and Ruby Dykstra were here on behalf of the YESC, the YMCA Earth Service Corps. We talked about youth involvement, youth advocacy. Kyle was very optimistic about the state of youth advocacy within environmental justice. I think he had a lot of faith in young people, and I hope that was inspiring for everybody that listened.
Well, it's going to be their world.
Yeah. I think there's often a sense of pessimism we have.
Your world.
Yeah. There's often a sense of pessimism we have about climate change, but I thought that panel was really good to wrap up the first day because I thought it was very optimistic.
Yeah.
It was a very optimistic panel.
And there are a lot of different messages out there. I've heard people say that, from what they understand, if we don't fix this in anywhere from 10 years to 2 years, it will be reversible. No, I don't know. I'm saying that is not fact, but that's what people are thinking. And they're getting this information from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of comments on irreversibility have been floating around since I've been in high school. So yeah, it gets scarier by the day, but I'm glad that we ended that first day on a note of hope instead of fear.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that the earth we live on is facing a number of different issues. You could say crises. Again, we talked about this. Folks may be familiar or have heard about global warming or the melting ice caps, and say, well, that doesn't really connect with me. It does. It does, because this is a global issue. But there are a number of different issues that I like to call industrial caused issues that impact us environmentally and from our health to our mental health as well. And these are the things that we're trying to share with you over the course of these 5 days to let you know that you're not alone in some of these issues. And I'm wondering, do we have we also had a King County Executive Dal Constantine
Yes.
on opening day. Do we have that? Can we show that clip from Dal Constantine?
Rainier Avenue Radio listeners, I'm King County Executive Dal Constantine. Thank you for joining us for Earth Deserves More Than a Day. We're thrilled to partner with Rainier Avenue Radio for week-long programming discussing environmental justice and highlighting the work King County is doing in our commitment to protect and preserve our shared natural environment for generations to come. That includes restoring salmon habitat, improving our region's water quality, creating equitable access to parks and the outdoors, and more. In collaboration with community partners, including Rainier Avenue Radio, King County uplifts the deep knowledge and voices of frontline communities and communities of color as we center environmental justice in our work. This week is an opportunity to inspire hope for the future by demonstrating what we can achieve when we partner with community and mobilize resources to accomplish a shared vision. You can also learn more tips to go green and Earth Week events by visiting kingcounty.gov/Earth Day. We hope you tune in to Rainier Avenue Radio throughout the week to hear from King County staff and community as part of Earth Deserves More Than a Day. Let the successes we highlight inspire us to achieve even more.
All right, thank you, King County Executive Constantine. And by the way, King County Parks is a sponsor for this. And you know what? I'm going to give them some props for stepping up and sharing the responsibility. I talked about the industrial polluters. In order to do that, you have to have government buy-in in order to counter what some of these private organizations have done on a local level and a federal level. And, Charlie, I think that on a local level, from what I've heard so far, King County is making the effort and putting people in position to be more responsible when it comes to countering some of the environmental injustices that we have going on today.
And it also feels like they, at least the representatives that we know from there, really care about what the community has to say about these issues and how they engage in the outdoors and how they engage with the services that King County Parks provide. If you come down to the Columbia City Theater, you can fill out a survey for King County Parks. They want to hear your voice. They want to know what they can improve upon, which is very fulfilling and rewarding to hear from government agencies.
And you know what? Speaking of government, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, April 9th, to be exact, the federal government national drinking water standards were finalized to reduce people's exposure to serious health risks and prevent thousands of premature deaths. It seems like this is a little overdue.
Yeah. Amen.
That a couple of weeks ago, there were national drinking water standards. So apparently, from state to state, states were allowed to hold their own standards, but now we have a national drinking water standard, which seems like we should have done that a while ago.
Would have assumed they already did.
And that's funny because I didn't know that there wasn't a national drinking water standard.
I was assuming we were all drinking somewhat the same water, but I guess it varies drastically.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've seen that too. Even like Flint, Michigan.
Yep.
We couldn't have possibly had a standard for that to occur. April 18th, also the U.S. government changed how it manages a tenth of his land. The Interior's Bureau of Land Management, which is the nation's largest landlord, just finalized a bill on April 18th that changes about how 245 million of public land is used. So they used to give out leases to oil companies and mining firms, but now they're giving out restoration leases and mitigation leases.
Wow.
So restoration organizations can buy this land and restore it, which is amazing because in the Bureau's, I think, around 80 years of existence, it had never given out those leases before.
Wow.
So a great standard to set right before Earth Day, I would say.
I would say so. And very shortly, we're excited to have Women of Wisdom from Tri-Cities, discuss Eastern Washington-based, community-based environmental solutions. And they're facing some different problems over in Eastern Washington than we face over here as rural areas often do as opposed to urban areas. One of the issues that over in Eastern Washington is the nuclear Hanford plant that's over there, and tribal organizations are doing what they can because you would think that the polluting of the water would be something that people would be more thoughtful about, but these things happen, and unfortunately, they begin to, when you have something polluting our waterways, that's our fisheries, and people depend on these things. And so there's a lot of different issues. We'll hear what Women of Wisdom of Tri-Cities have to say about some of the issues that are taking place in Eastern Washington. Charlie, I do feel as though in Western Washington, there is a concerted effort. We've been in touch with a number of different organizations who are committed to ensuring that environmental justice, climate justice issues are at the top of the list, at least when we're talking about our elected officials and having it be on their minds. Now, what we're going to do at that point, I think that more folks from our community have to be aware of what's taking place. More folks of our community need to be engaged and involved, and then make their voices known as well.
And I hope that this talk also inspires action in Eastern Washington. I think it's very easy to assume that this side of the state is the only one working towards climate justice, but there's different effects that people feel in Eastern Washington than here. I mean, fires are a bigger thing in Eastern Washington.
Oh boy.
I remember staying in my house for 5 days in Spokane because the air quality was too bad. So I think it's important to recognize that Seattle and this sort of like liberal hub that we think of it as is not the only place working towards climate justice. That's happening in rural areas. It's just not as publicized.
Yeah. You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. It's Tony B, and I'm joined by Charlie Darnell. We're kind of giving you a recap of what's been taking place over the past couple of days during Earth Deserves More Than a Day. I think you went over Monday, Charlie. Can you go over what took place just yesterday? Another amazing, incredible day yesterday.
I would love to. The first panel on Tuesday was one of my favorites, 9:30. If you were up that early, I hope you were. It was great. We were talking about resilience hubs with Nancy Huizer and Bin Zhong. I think one really important aspect that they said that I think should be more publicized is the idea of building resilience hubs, these places where communities can come, design their own space, feel protected, feel like they have a place to go before, during, after an emergency, are not spaces that the government is coming in and building in new areas to somehow increase the property value or anything like that. It's spaces that communities already trust being renovated and turned into more green spaces, spaces that the community can design, which I think is very important to mention, that it is community-led, community-built, and right now, fairly theoretical, but they're working towards making these things very material in a lot of areas of Seattle. The second presentation that we had was Solid Grounds Rent Smart presentation.
Yeah.
Very to the point, very factual. If you are renting, leasing in Seattle, I would recommend going and checking that one out.
Definitely.
I am a new renter myself, and there were a lot of helpful tips in that presentation. Next was communities of conscious.
And before you go on that, we
Yeah.
also had a few audience members as well who had said the same thing,
Mhm.
and to be able to have all of this information about your rights and responsibilities as a renter, I think is incredibly valuable. And you can email us at rainieravenueradio.world@gmail.com. And if you request those renters' rules and responsibilities, we will send that to you
Yeah,
to make sure that you get it.
we have a very dense, a very long PDF from Solid Ground that we are more than happy to share. Next was Communities of Conscious, Efforts to Protect Communities of Color. That was with John Yasutaki. A very kind of informal, fun, interesting panel with someone with James King from the Black Farmers Collective and Stephanie Young from the co-executive of the Kamer? How do you? Myrrh. Community of Seattle and King County. Next was the Circular Economy Business Park panel, which I think we may have misnamed. I think that panel was much larger, more general than just that idea. It was about deconstruction and salvaging materials and not just throwing things into our waste stream, but making them reusable. And two very, very passionate individuals on that panel. Jolie and Catherine Petrie did an amazing job and really stressed the importance of finding value in the materials you have after you're done using them. I thought
I'll say the title was a little wonky.
Yeah, definitely.
But the information was valuable and solid, and a great effort that these folks are doing.
Yeah, and I would recommend checking out the Circular Economy Business Park. I think that was too specific of a title, but is a very interesting project.
Yeah.
Accompanied with the reuse facility that Quest spoke on at the end of the panel, just makes a world's difference in the deconstruction of homes, the deconstruction of commercial buildings. I think those spaces are going to be really useful for a lot of people in the community that are looking to build without having to chop down new lumber.
And you use that term deconstruction, which is different than demolition.
I think, yeah. So Quest talked about how he started with a demolition company, but through a mentor soon found that it was much more valuable to have someone go through a home or go through a commercial building and figure out what aspects of that building are still useful. So if you take a piece of lumber, it doesn't necessarily have to hold any weight in a new building, but it can still impact that building. It can still be useful. It could be turned into a chair. It can be turned into a door. It doesn't have to just be thrown away, go to a landfill. I thought one really interesting thing he said at the beginning was everybody's gone to a landfill and seen something that they went, oh, why did someone throw that away?
Yeah.
And I thought that was a beautiful example because every time I've gone to the dump, I've gone, oh, I could have taken that. So I think that's something to think about. I think the main point of that panel was just before you throw anything away, before you demolish something, take a second and maybe think how someone else can use that material.
Yep. So we've got today, we've got tomorrow. Women of Wisdom Tri-Cities are going to be on for you in about 5 minutes. And excited to see this panel as well. All the panels have been so informational, but really just to hear what's going on and what are the environmental based solutions that they're coming up with for Eastern Washington. But wait, there's more. Charlie, go ahead now and tell them about what's going to come up later on today so you can mark this down in your calendar and be attentive to the particular panel that you like going on today. And there's some good ones today too.
Yeah, noon to 1, the Urban Metropolitan League will be presenting on building community resilience by uplifting environmental justice. This is something that we got to see on Saturday through their Black Earth event. I think
Phenomenal event.
Phenomenal event. They very much live what they are talking about. The two people that we have on this panel were both the organizers of that event. Highly recommend checking it out. 1:30 to 2:30 is the Transit Riders Union.
Another outstanding panel discussion that is important for everyone.
Yeah. This is talking about transportation justice. This is our only panel specifically about transportation justice. That was something that I felt very strongly about including in this week-long series of events. Highly recommend checking it out with the transportation levy being very pertinent right now. Next and finally, from 3 to 4 is Communities and Clean Water. This is another King County panel hosted by Mary Rayborn, the communications at King County Stormwater Services, Parker Linus, a next-gen intern, which is a new internship program to get young people involved in green jobs, and William Herbert, a human resources analyst for Stormwater Services. This is going to be, I think, a great panel based on what you said. We have new drinking water standards. I'm sure they'll comment on that. But yeah, highly educated individuals going to give a great and a good panel that will connect with everybody. Everybody drinks water.
Yep. And we've traditionally, because of where we live, have had pretty good water. Although our water does go through a filtration system where you get things that are added to it to kill things that are bad for us. And then it has to go through another system to take those things out. But we generally have had good water quality, and we'll find out a little bit later today where we're at with that, if that is still consistent, if that has changed. So yeah, Charlie, we're almost out of time here. And that's a good thing because it gets us a little bit closer to Women of Wisdom.
Yeah. Just excited to see their panel.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share before we?
I would say if you see the panelists on the schedule, I would look them up and see the work that they do.
Yeah.
No one up here is too self-indulgent. No one up here is too egotistical. They don't go on and on about themselves, but they're highly educated and highly influential individuals that deserve at least a Google. So I would check out their work.
Yep. And go to the website. Every panel that has been broadcast so far is available on demand for you to check out. So you can go back and take a look at something that you may have missed and check it out at your convenience. So we thank you for joining us again today. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you
for joining me with this update. We'll do this again tomorrow.
We will.
And right now we're going to go to commercial break. When we get back, Women of Wisdom, Chaune Fitzgerald, the founder and CEO of that organization, also a representative from the Washington African American Chamber of Commerce, and a representative from the Tri-Cities Diversity and Inclusion Council, and then Lynn Carlson, who is the executive director of Gemini Corps. Yeah, stay tuned. Women of Wisdom coming up in your next couple minutes, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
I'm Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and when I'm not deep frying a turducken in a closed garage, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World.
You probably have questions about COVID vaccines. Here are some answers about how they're being made.
How are COVID vaccines being produced faster?
Usually, vaccine testing and production are separate steps. But because of the pandemic, vaccines are being developed on parallel tracks. So both steps are happening just at the same time.
How are the vaccines being tested?
Right now, several different COVID vaccines are in testing. Each go through multiple clinical trials with up to thousands of volunteers.
How do vaccines get approved?
Not all COVID vaccine versions will make it to the final stages of testing and approval. Produced vaccines that do not pass clinical trials will be destroyed. But for those that do pass, a team of medical experts will examine test results and possible side effects. If the vaccine is effective and safe, it gets approved and gets to you. Go to covidvaccinewa.org to learn more. A message from the state of Washington.
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the cabinets, from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again. Jazz from the cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Lines.
It's Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince, Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Night Beat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Night Beat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba, the underground surround sound start time. Paul Pincher.
Tuning in, my name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday evening sound sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to mid Sunday evening. Your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Hey Seattle, here are some storage tips to love food, stop waste. Onions make potatoes sprout faster. Keep onions away from potatoes. Ripe bananas give off a gas that makes the fruit around them ripen faster. Store bananas away from other fruits. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
Rainier Avenue Radio. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Let's make sure. Yeah. We are here today to engage in a critical conversation. Hello, hello, hello. Greetings. Today I am excited to join this phenomenal event for Earth Deserves More Than a Day. My name is Chaune Fitzgerald, and I am with Women of Wisdom Tri-Cities. So let's make that correction here on the screen so we don't get our panelists mixed up today, so we can get that corrected. I also want to just say that we have a great lineup of presenters today from Eastern Washington that I'm excited to present and share some of the initiatives that we are working on. But first and foremost, we will be discussing a fundamental issue that affects us all, and that is environmental justice. As we look around us, we see the interconnectedness of our environment and our communities. And we cannot deny the truth that not all individuals and neighborhoods bear the environmental burdens equally. So, environmental justice to me, and for a lot of us here in America and especially here in Eastern Washington, environmental justice is not just a concept, it's a call to action. It's a demand for equity and a commitment to ensuring that every person, regardless of their background, zip code, or economic situation, has the right to live in a clean and healthy environment. So today, we have assembled a panel of experts here in Eastern Washington, and they are composed of activists, they are community leaders, they are nonprofit CEOs and presidents. And I want you to hear from them today. These are my friends, and we all are here on the forefront in Eastern Washington, fighting for environmental justice here in our region, especially on the behalf of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So I would just like to say thank you again for inviting us, and welcome to our panelists. All right, let's see. I'm going to introduce them individually. So today we have with us Tri-City Diversity Inclusion Council, Ms. Kanisha. Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in today. Ms. Kanisha Montgomery is here, and she will be representing the Tri-City Diversity and Inclusion Council. And I would also like to bring to the forefront Mrs. Robin Calloway from the Washington African American Chamber of Commerce. Welcome.
Hi, Robin. Good morning.
Good morning. We also have joining us today Mr. Irvin Brown from the Tri-Cities NAACP chapter.
Good morning, everyone. Blessed to be here.
Good morning. And last but not least, the mighty Miss Lynn Carlson, who is representing Gemini Corps, a very fundamental organization here in our community that is definitely going to bring some worthy information to our conversation today.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Lynn, for joining us. And so everybody wants to hear from Eastern Washington, and mainly because we have the burden here in Eastern Washington of the what everybody knows as the Hanford nuclear site, correct? And so briefly, let's just get this out in the open, because I definitely want to make sure that we all know that we live in Eastern Washington, and so we have quite a few initiatives. And if you look at the tool that gives identification of the risk and the pollutants and all the health hazards in our area, that we are ranking really high on that chart. And so today, these organizations will not only talk about what their initiatives are in the community, but also chime in on some of these Hanford initiatives, and also talk about some of their initiatives that they are putting forward to ensure that environmental justice is not only advocated, but also being implemented in our region. But you know what? I want to go through and give each organization an opportunity to speak and to just share a little bit about some of their efforts, what they are doing here in Tri-Cities and Eastern Washington in general, to help with some of the policies and initiatives that have went out to make sure that we are doing our part as community leaders, as well as individuals who serve on these organizations and different boards, to make sure environmental justice is being trickled down to our community, families, children's, and businesses. So if we like, we can start with, let's see who we have here on the screen. We'll start with you, Miss Lynn, because I can see you first. And let's get everybody to mute when you're not speaking. Feedback. Thank you.
So I'm Lynn Carlson. I am an organizational development and DEI practitioner with Gemini Core here in the Tri-Cities region, and also work very closely with several nonprofits working for equity, inclusion, and social justice.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Next, we have Mr. Irvin Brown.
I'm having some technical difficulties. What was the question, or we're just giving a little bit of background?
Well, just you could give a little bit of background on your work with environmental justice, or if you want to just briefly introduce yourself and your work that you have, and the initiatives that you have that you would like to achieve through your, that will bring community-based solutions to environmental justice through your work.
No, absolutely. I think, again, Irving Brown, many different hats. I'm sure we all have a lot of hats on. So being Mr. Brown's Consulting, the president of that entity, as well as the president for the NAACP Chapter 1135B here in the Tri-Cities and other great community work. One of the first things I would say about this large task / concern is that getting involved at any level or any way that you can, it starts with communication, asking questions, but also engaging with your community to find out how you can gauge how they feel about that, and then also giving the empowerment to get involved. A lot of people are afraid to get involved because lack of knowledge or lack of information. So the more we share, we educate and lead them into the direction of good, solid resources that are factual. With this information, they can attain more information, more knowledge, and then therefore the movement is now happening. So community engagement is very, very big. Research is very big, data collection. So these two entities I'm definitely involved in is looking to be more policy driven in this area and help and collaborate wherever there may be a need for longevity in this process that we're going in. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Robin Calloway.
Okay, I've got to unmute myself before I start speaking. Well, good morning, everyone. So I am here representing the Washington African American Chamber of Commerce, but I also wear another hat with Women of Wisdom Tri-Cities, and we are really trying to address environmental justice in several ways. We are involved in community engagement activities and heavily on education. So not with the chamber, where most of our education is geared toward businesses in the community and the broader community of the Tri-Cities, but also providing information to individuals as well to give them the right resources, because historically in our communities, we have not had knowledge of resources that were available to help in any of these areas of disparity. So we are trying to address systematic issues by providing resources, training and development, so that our community can grow and thrive in all aspects of their life.
Thank you. Ms. Konisha Montgomery.
Good morning again, everyone. I'm Clenisha C.T. Montgomery, and I'm representing Tri-Cities Diversity and Inclusion Council. We are a council working to unite the Tri-Cities and create an inclusive community through education, advocacy, and outreach. One of the ways that we address environmental justice is also remembering that racial justice is environmental justice. And it's a number of ways that we incorporate that into our organization. We have DEI trainings. We also make sure that the African American diaspora has resources for COVID-19 vaccines. And also we provide free COVID-19 testing to make sure that health disparities are addressed as well. We do a number of events throughout the year to make sure that we are making sure that our environment is very inclusive in the form of this family and community.
Thank you so much for sharing and your introductions. And hopefully we can definitely get to all of our questions today in a timely manner. But I want to highlight one of the issues here, first and foremost, and the definition of environmental justice. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time here in Eastern Washington, I definitely want to put the clear definition out there for environmental justice. And it's basic, it's simple. It refers to the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, in the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. It also aims to address the disproportionate burden of environmental hazards and pollution that often impact marginalized communities. And I just want to add also communities of color. Okay, and those communities basically ensure this environmental justice policy makes sure that all individuals have the right to a safe and healthy environment. And I want to definitely express the interest in Eastern Washington due to the Hanford site. I know that we get a lot of questions about the nuclear site, the nuclear waste. I, for one, moved here. My husband's a nuclear engineer, and we moved to Tri-Cities as part of that cleanup. And so I definitely am an implant here to Washington State, and I had a lot of concerns moving to Eastern Washington because of the nuclear Hanford site itself being directly located here, and it takes up more than 500 square miles of our land. And for over 30 years, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy has produced tons of plutonium for the use of atomic weapons and, nuclear weapons that definitely were used in the Civil War, as we know. And we are here for that cleanup. And so a lot of people that live here do not know of most of the hazards that we are facing every day with these hazardous materials and these radioactive materials that are being handled, of course, with care and under extreme supervision. But nevertheless, it impacts us. It impacts our health. It impacts the air that we breathe. It impacts our water supply. It impacts our soil, where our plants are grown. It impacts our fisheries, our birds, their ability to flourish and be healthy in this space, and also, a lot of the land use. So we really do have a huge, we're on radar basically, and on alert most times for being number one in our state as the most hazardous places to live. And so with that in mind, we are, called as leaders in our community to not only bring awareness, but also to educate about some of these hazards in our communities and ways that we can help support our communities to make sure that environmental justice is being served. So these questions that I ask you, you don't have to necessarily reflect directly to the Hanford site. I know that we also have a huge agricultural community here where we have a lot of individuals who are low income. They come from different walks of life where financially they cannot afford to live in places where you have better quality grocery stores or better access to education, or even in areas where there's lots of gas pollution because of the public transportation being a little bit more rampant. But if you will, as we go through these questions, if you would like to chime in, if your organization is working in these areas, please feel free to answer the questions that we have on our panel this morning. I know each organization are working on different initiatives, but our first question today is, based on your involvement in the community, how can environmental justice be achieved through your community-based solutions? And what role does your organization play to addressing environmental inequities? I'm sorry. You can
I don't know if we raise our hands, but I kind of like this one. What's the order in the room today? Do we raise our hands, or
if you feel like it's pulling at you, go right ahead and address it?
Well, I'll just be brief because the how, I like the word how just by itself, because it's so many different areas. And as far as being a part of the NAACP and then a consulting agency, as well as have worked in the agricultural field, these kind of hit all those areas. And just briefly how all three entities I mentioned can be involved, as well as partnering with great organizations that are even on screen today is a huge plus at fighting that. But community engagement and empowerment, community-led research and data collection I mentioned earlier, capacity building, it's huge. Collaborative partnerships, again, like I spoke about, this awesome group that's here today, policy advocacy, that's huge for me. Like I said, being in my background, community mobilization, education, and awareness, which I did some research to even find out how, when, where, and why this conversation is there. It has some deep grassroots to the Afro-American community, as I read. Legacy advocacy, it should not stop with us. It should be collaborative and partnership work that takes us, it takes us to the long haul, I should just say. So generation after generation should be working on this, just like it took generations for Hanford to be what it is today. It'll take generations to reduce the threat of what Hanford has produced over generations, not just, years, through generations. So I think all these collaborative efforts make sense. And I know that the NAACP on a local and national level is really highly engaged in areas as such. So the work must continue. And as we collaborate, as we're doing today, that's the effort that it takes. So thanks for allowing me to answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Would anyone else?
So I wanted to just chat about this from a different angle. And with the chamber specifically, what we are doing to address this is really boots on the ground for our community. So we attend all types of legislative forums, in person, on Zoom, to try to find out information about projects and things that are going on in the area. Because what we want to do is we want to change the representation of who's at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so this even goes as far as to say, we want to get businesses prepared to do some of the work that's involved in what we heard recently, from cleanup to catch up to clean energy, right? From cleanup to clean energy. So how do we get our businesses, our community involved in a new wave of businesses, employment, jobs, getting them ready to move into the future of clean energy, clean emissions, all of those types of industries that are popping up in our community, in our area. So one of the ways that WOW Tri-Cities has approached this is by zero emission electric cars. So the WOW car share, where our community is able to rent electric vehicles with reduced criteria than they normally would at a rent a car agency. So that's one of the ways. We're looking at possibly taking on an intern to work in the EV space to teach them about it and what that process is and how it's going to be moving forward into the future. Another thing that we're starting to research now is the turbine wind energy and environment that's coming into our community as well, and seeing if there's opportunities for our community to get involved in those projects as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's very valuable, and hopefully we can get our organizations to stand along with you with that initiative. Anyone else like to unmute? I know that sometimes with the Hanford cleanup, I feel like in our communities of color that the information is not trickling down, and sometimes the lack of knowledge and the lack of, like you said, participation and having that invite to hear and sit at those, be in the rooms where these conversations are being had, are limited sometimes to us as people of color. But we are definitely, I know this core group are making waves of making sure that we get our foot in the door and to be a part of the conversations that are being had. So we can take that information and take it back to our communities of colors, take it back to those marginalized communities so that they can be aware and they can be abreast to the changes and all the updates as, you know, individuals receive them who have historically been part of the process. And so with that being said, I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to not only get involved, but get information, readily information, current information brought to them. And if that means changing, putting it in Spanish and putting it in other languages where they can read it or make it accessible to those who can, who are not English speaking. That's the role that we take as organizations, root organizations. That is the stance that we take here in Eastern Washington. And that's going to lead me into my second question. And then after that, we're going to take a break. So our second question is, in what ways can grassroots organizations and community-led initiatives effectively advocate for environmental justice and promote sustainability within our BIPOC neighborhoods? And so I feel like I kind of chimed in on that a little bit about some of the things that I envision us as leaders to make sure that we're reaching those organizations, because we are the people who are here on the ground. And so I do feel like we take on some of that responsibility. But Lynn, let me hear from you.
Sure. One of the things that comes to mind to me is that famous Audre Lorde quote that we don't live single issue lives. And Clinisha touched on this a moment ago. Environmental justice is intertwined with other forms of inequities, such as food scarcity, poverty, low education, racism, and other forms of oppression. So it's through that coalition building and across multiple grassroots organizations like we're doing today that we can really advocate for collective liberation and holistic solutions that are based in the communities. Like the disability advocates from the 70s said, nothing about us without us. So the communities that are closest to the impacts are also closest to the solutions. And I think that if communities are able to co-create solutions together, it improves the chances that those solutions will be adopted and sustained, as Irving was saying, for the next 7 generations. So I really think it's that awareness of current impacts and the awareness of the existing solutions, kind of like what you were saying, Chaune, getting the word out there to meet people where they are. That's the collective power that gives us the ability to agitate and disrupt and get into good trouble which Irving is really familiar with, but basically to be able to push back and push on those folks that are sitting in seats of power to advocate for real change for our communities.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn, for sharing. Clinisha, would you like to chime in on this one?
Yes, I agree with what everyone said. And I just wanted to say that if we can create a space where we prioritize inclusion and diversity, I think it will be very effective because the population here is growing. The BIPOC population is growing. Mm-hmm. And if they feel that they can come into a safe space and a comfortable space where their voices can be heard, we can address these situations, these disparities and environmental justices at a level that's more inclusive to make sure that the marginalized communities have a voice because they are most affected because they're farm workers. They are those that are transplants from other places looking for a better life, not understanding that working for Hanford may contribute to different health disparities. So one of the things we will continue to make sure we address is holistic approaches like Lynn was mentioning, and also making sure that the marginalized communities have resources and education to the health, the diseases that will be created due to the environmental factors that we're dealing with in this climate.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I think that we are going on a short break, if I'm not mistaken.
Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Support for Rainier Avenue Radio comes from Cascade PBS, presenting season 2 of Out and Back with Allison Mariella Desir. Join Allison as she explores the Pacific Northwest with changemakers who are reclaiming space in the outdoors and creating opportunities for local BIPOC communities to engage with nature and find joy and healing. It's available now on Cascade PBS app and airing on KCTS 9 Thursdays at 8:50 p.m.
1, 2, get down! What's up, big and little homies? This is Masvita Maraire, host of Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio World, your one-stop shop for Seattle sports. We cover preps, we cover college, we cover pro, we cover it all. Huskies, Mariners, Seahawks, Garfield, South, Roosevelt, Metro, King County. This is what you want to listen to for all the sports that's happening in Seattle. Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Do you want to reach out to the Vietnamese community in Seattle? Just advertise in Người Việt, that is Northwest Vietnamese News, the longest running Vietnamese language newspaper in our region. Go to nvnorthwest.com.
Greetings. This is your host, DJ Naftali, Rainier Avenue Radio World, the best DJ in the Seattle area. You can catch me every Monday at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Like I said, this is DJ Naftali, the best reggae in Seattle, Washington, the best radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio World. Come on, right?
Love food? Here's some storage tips to keep it fresh longer. Store cut fruits and vegetables in the fridge. Place in reusable containers. Keep bread in the freezer for longer storage. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
Rainier Avenue Radio. Seattle's best talk and sports.
Hello, hello, and we are back. And again, thank you, Rainier Avenue Radio, for having us here today. Women of Wisdom Tri-Cities is definitely appreciative, along with my friends here today in Eastern Washington, who are definitely on the forefront of making sure that environmental justice policies are being implemented. And we're doing our part right here in Eastern Washington to make sure that the Hanford site and the agriculture and all the things that we need to be informed about are trickling down to the communities of colors who are most affected by the hazardous waste and some of the historical harm that has been done with the waste material and that are affecting our water, our fishery, and also the air that we breathe. So today I have some friends that I want to reintroduce and bring them back up so that we can go right into our next portion of our panel on community-based solutions for environmental justice. And so I want to first and foremost just let everybody know about the tool that is available. If you're not sure, do I live in a safe environment or not? I feel like a lot of people leave the west side of Washington State to the eastern side of Washington State, thinking they're going to a less harmful environment to live, but it's quite the opposite. So I just want to bring awareness to the tool that you can access through the department through DOH, which is the Washington Environmental Health Disparities Map, which will allow you to kind of look at some data about each city and each county that you live in to tell you a little bit more about some of the environmental hazards and some of the social environmental hazards that we encounter right here in Washington State. So I want to go right into our next set of questions with our panelists today. And that question is about the challenges that you face. Now, I know historically in Pasco, some of you have organizations that are in Pasco, Washington. Historically, that is where the most poverty-driven area was in Tri-Cities, where most of the Blacks were only allowed to live. They were the workers that worked out at the Hanford site, but they were only, they were redlined to these areas. But those areas also had the most industries, like the railroad, the manufacturers, the even today when you look at Pasco and where all the plants are, as far as the potato plants and the other manufacturers that produce a lot of harmful pollutants in the air, and even the agriculture on the rural areas of Franklin County. When you think about that and where your organization is placed in the community as far as being the leader and in the forefront, my question today to you is, what are the challenges that you face, and what your followers in your organization, what do they face as they are assessing clean air, water, and other environmental resources? And how can we collaboratively put efforts between our residents, our government, and our businesses to help address these disparities?
If I can, I did some homework, so I'm a little excited about this one.
Okay.
Community actually help. As for some of you may know or not know, I'm an implant here since 2008, but we have some riches in our backgrounds and our communities, in our stories, that is really important to me. And when we talk about this is community work. So I went to go look for some things, and it says the BIPOC communities face a range of challenges in accessing clean air, water, and other environmental resources due to systemic inequalities, historical injustices, and discriminatory practices. And some of them are, and this is really a really cool conversation I just wanted to share with you all within our communities, that are a little afraid to speak about some of this, to be quite honest, and some of them are sick because of this. I'm just going to be very transparent. Environmental racism is felt. Lack of infrastructure and investment, limited access to information and resources. Thank God for what we're doing on today. We have historical trauma and displacement. Some of the stories are as such, but very true. Community engagement and participation. Lack of that due to lack of information, again, resources, equitable resource allocation, policy reform and enforcement. Maybe we could make a difference. Capacity building and education. I believe Kanisha touched on that as well as Lynn. Corporate responsibility and accountability. I went yay for that. Cultural competency and inclusivity. Kanisha hit that. All of these, there's a few more, but all of those things was a community conversation I wanted to have to even be prepared for this, but then come to find out that I became a great student of great information. So this collaboration, again, what we're doing today is very important. And just wanted to jump in first and share our community actually is involved and they're aware of all of these things that I listed, if not feeling it. So hopefully this, this little small piece I shared would be helpful and anybody can elaborate on that. And I know this is a BIPOC concern. So thank you.
Yes. And also, Kanisha, I just want to ask, because I know you do a lot of work with refugees and individuals who are new to our area from different backgrounds and nationalities, not just Black, Indigenous, but also, like I said, people coming from Ukraine and people coming from different areas of Africa and Iraq, Iran. And I know that we serve all communities, but a lot of times we don't think about asking them the questions, and addressing their concerns. So in your experience with working with different nationalities and different cultures and new implants, what initiatives do you have in place to help them address their health inequities and also giving them opportunities to learn more about assessing clean air, water, and other environmental resources?
So the things that we have done is we always make sure that we connect them to other community resources that provide things that we do not provide. So that's number one, to make sure that they're accessible to the community that they just been implanted in and know where to go for whether it be DPSS, whether it be for housing, homeless shelters, also places for their children for school supplies. And what we provide not just resources, but we also provide food for them. We have grocery cards that we give out. We give out bus passes so they can have reliable transportation, which, the bus, it helps with the environmental justice as well with pollutants. And we also make sure that they are connected to a shelter or even a hotel or a place that's specific for the refugees that are coming here, so they'll have a sustainable place to live and be comfortable. We make sure that they have COVID-19 testing, because coming here, they may not have been in proximity to COVID as much as we have. So we make sure that they have those different kits, because when they first come, they don't have access to healthcare. So we make sure that they have those and also give them the resources to healthcare systems so that they can make sure that their health is in place, because our environment does contribute to their respiratory system. Also their allergies as well is something big that they may not deal with. So we just make sure that we cover all those basic necessities to make sure that they are sustaining and also adapting to our environment.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Lynn or Robin, would you like to add?
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit of information when we talk about disparities and disproportionate things. I also looked up about, a study that found out who had the highest exposure to monitored pollutants. So the Hispanic community had 10 out of 14 monitored pollutants, and the African Americans had a higher exposure rate, which was the highest, 13 out of 14 pollutants. So this is really linked to health issues such as asthma, lung disease, and cancer. So another way that Women of Wisdom has contributed to fighting this was to have community conversations around these health disparities that affect communities of color. So we have professionals come in and talk about these lung diseases as well as other things, other kind of diseases that predominantly affect the community. Then we have people who are experts in nutrition and holistic healing to think about what we're putting into our bodies to combat these things, as well as dental, because a lot of our health also depends on our oral health and our oral care. So we've been doing these conversations. We've been passing out oral health kits so that people have the opportunity to make sure that their oral health is better. We've had a dental smiles bus that came over for a week that gave free services to the community for oral health. So they just made an appointment and came and got free services. So we want to continue to do those types of things and partner with other organizations. We're planning a town hall right now where we'll talk about what are the exact needs and how we can work towards supporting those needs and resources in our community.
Thank you, Robin. Lynn? I think she says she's back. Hi, Lynn. Are you muted? Oh, there. I think her internet is going in and out. We'll give her an opportunity to chime in momentarily. But moving forward, I just want to definitely thank each and every one of you for your efforts and what you're doing towards the BIPOC community here in Eastern Washington, and making sure that they are aware of the tools that are available and also the resources that are available in our fight for environmental justice. And we will continue to work towards environmental justice and educate our communities of color here in Eastern Washington, not only on the health side, but on the technology side. And so with that, my next question and final question, because we know we have another, the Urban League of Seattle is coming on right after us here at noon. So I want to make sure that we're able to get our last question in and our final thoughts on environmental justice. And that one is based on technology. And so with that, how can technology and innovation be harnessed to empower communities in their fight for environmental justice? And if your organization is incorporating technology and innovation, can you give us some examples and some of the impact and success stories of those solutions that are positively impacting marginalized and BIPOC populations here in Eastern Washington? So let me start with you, Lynn, while we got you connected.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, some technical difficulties there. I think as we see with so many current grassroots advocacy efforts, social media, mobile apps, alternative news channels are highly effective in empowering communities to push back against injustices. However, communities of color are underrepresented in industries like tech, like clean energy, venture capital. So it's going to take some intentional efforts to create access, representation, education, mentorship, sponsorship to those places. That's vital for innovating beyond our outdated carbon-based energy and recycling solutions. And I just want to circle back to something Irving said earlier. These systems and policies and structures that divest from and disinvest from communities of color were intentional. So it's going to take collaborative efforts. It's going to take technology and innovation to redress a lot of those harms that are centuries old. So where organizations like the Tri-Cities Diversity and Inclusion Council and Wisdom and NAACP really benefit the communities is to resource overburdened communities and build the capacity for organizing and movement building. This includes tapping on leaders, making sure folks have the knowledge, make sure they have the funds, the influence, there's allies on board, and that technology to invest in removing barriers. So I think a lot of these community organizations and the coalition building, like what we're doing today, is probably going to have the biggest impact in kind of reversing those past cycles of harm.
Thank you so much. Would anybody else like to chime in on that question? What ways have you incorporated technology and innovation?
So for us, we use our social media platforms. And our social media platform has become a hub of information for the Tri-Cities. So we try to gather as much information as possible so that it can reach our the entire Tri-Cities, Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland, to make sure that everyone is aware and have accessibility to information. One of the things that we have started is Wellness Wednesdays, where we post information specifically to people of color to make sure that they are receiving access to information and also resources that they can utilize in this area. Another thing we're focusing on, the 8 dimensions of wellness. The 8 dimensions of wellness that will make sure that we combat the trauma, we combat environmental injustices, and we combat just creating a systemic approach for ourselves that creates legendary healing and legendary health. Also, we are working on a community health platform as well to make sure that we are addressing chronic disease management and not only sending them to the doctor or giving them medication, but teaching them how to become managers over their own health and being aware and using holistic herbs and different substances outside of the traditional medicine to make sure that they can take these practices and start to make it a lifestyle and create wellness-centered lifestyles.
Thank you so much. That is very informative, and we will continue to follow the Facebook page of Tri-City Diversity Inclusion Council to check out those updates. Would anybody else like to chime in on that question?
Just briefly, I know we're closing out here. Just what's really important for me is data collection and monitoring. I will take it back to the NAACP and see how we can be a major part of collecting this information and monitoring this information in collaboration with what's already happening today. We have Wellness Wednesday. We have bits and pieces of different collaborations happening, but documenting this is very important. Again, I agree. Digital storytelling and media advocacy is huge, and it costs you nothing. It's what I use a phrase is a free resource to keep everyone not only involved, informed, but healthy at the same time. I think information is also very healthy. It's refreshing to the mind. So I applaud the council for having Wellness Wednesdays, and we're somewhat as a NAACP unit / chapter moving into informative types of things during the week or the month. So we're very much, as we are a freshly generated chapter, we're looking forward to community mapping and visualization, data collection and monitoring, as mentioned, digital storytelling. So this should all be coming up within the next month. So I'm glad to know someone else is doing it so we can collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's what it's all about, is collaboration. And I definitely want to share Women of Wisdom initiative because it is at the forefront of what we are doing right now. We are one of the only pilot projects here in Eastern Washington with the Zero Emissions Access Program. And that is a car share pilot that was put together through WSDOT under the care of the Washington Climate Commitment Act. So if you're not following that act or participating, make sure that you tap in and learn more about the CCA. And this act basically helps put cap and invest dollars to work by reducing climate pollution, creating jobs, and improving public health. So the Women of Wisdom WOW Car Share and WOW car charging stations are in the ground here in Eastern Washington. We are leading the way with cutting back on gas, pollutants, and zero emissions in our environment, and giving access to clean fuel transportation to underserved communities of color and underserved populations here in rural and urban areas of Eastern Washington. So I'm excited to be a part of that mission and part of this program, which is going to have a fleet of about 15 cars by the end of 2024. And I'm excited to be able to lead an organization that is making sure that Eastern Washington is included in the Environmental Justice Acts and also the HEAL Act, and as well as the CCA Act. And so if you're not familiar with those different climate acts, I'm going to charge each organization here and business represented to make sure that you share information on your social media about these different organizations, what they mean, and how they pertain to us, and so that collaboratively we can continue to inform our communities, our marginalized communities, of all the changes and bring them to the awareness of and putting their health first and foremost, where they live, work, and play, and making sure that those environments are safe and that they are receiving their fair opportunity and their fair justice in their communities where they live. And so I just want to thank each and every one of you for chiming in today and tapping in on this very important conversation on Earth Day week. So congratulations, hats off to you. Thank you for chiming in and learning more about Eastern Washington, our organizations who are on the forefront. We look forward to communicating and answering any questions that you may have offline. So thank you again, Rainier Radio, for having us today. Thank you. Do we have any other final closings? I know we got 3 minutes. Anyone else?
Just a big thank you, and looking forward to the collaboration coming forward.
Absolutely.
All righty, thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. And this collaboration and this platform is amazing, and it's one of the ways to make sure that we are addressing environmental justice on a large platform and reaching a massive group of people at one time. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today.